March 25th, 2019. Just log into my computer here. Okay, it's a special meeting tonight. We are welcoming our incoming superintendent. We will vote on a resolution to welcome her, and then we'll have some comments, and then we have cake. So who's here just for the cake? Okay, be honest to the front. So Janine, what should we? How do we do the vote for? Is it roll call vote that we have to do? Voting on the resolution. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a roll call vote? Okay. So there's a resolution to appoint Valerie Henning-Piedmont as our superintendent. Do I have a motion to appoint Dr. Henning-Piedmont as our superintendent? So moved. Do I have a second? All in favor? All right, congratulations. So I thought what I would do is just say a few words. Some board members want to say a few words, and then we're going to pass it over to you, Valerie, to say a few words, okay? So just to give everyone a sense of the process, you may have read the email, although amongst... I'm not sure what's going on over there. All your emails you might have missed, but just to give you a sense of the process, I think everyone's always curious, how do you find a superintendent? We worked with a great search consultancy here, which Bob Fryer and Joanne Kaplan, right here and sitting in the third row, and they led a process to get us down to about 40 applications. From those 40, they vetted them pretty thoroughly, got us down to a final 5. The board met 5. We had an interview with 5. From that, we chose 2. We had a second interview with 2 candidates, and then we chose to send both of those candidates on to a 17-person district-wide community interview process. And then that was with administrators, community members, teachers, parent organizations, and they met for an hour each with each candidate, and then they provided some thoughts and guidance to us. The board went back and had further conversations. And I think it's really important to understand, the decision criteria that we use. We have reached out to the community. In fact, in the last superintendent search, we reached out to the community, did an extensive survey, came up with really 10 decision criteria, focused on the whole child, focused on inclusive learning, focused on a variety of things that we've heard from you are really important. And that also filtered into our decision process. So in many ways, the community drove this as much as anything the Board of Education or anyone on that interview committee was doing. So I always think it's important to really note that this was really a community hiring effort and not on the part of a few people. And so one of the things that, the candidates were impressive, and one of the things that I will say maybe 1 or 2 things and then pass it over to other people on the board who want to say stuff. One of the things 2 things that really impressed me about Dr. Henning-Piedmont was just the focus on curriculum, the long-term focus on curriculum. I believe 10 years in the central office curriculum roles across 2 different school districts. Before that, middle school principals. Before that, a reading teacher, humanities teacher, and then 3 years in the superintendency. So 13 years central office experience gives you a lot of wisdom, gives you a lot of scars, and we hope to use all that wisdom and all those scars here in our district. And one line, and I think I wrote it down, I don't know that I got you perfectly, Valerie, but it was something along the lines of we have an opportunity to help kids get better at participating in our democratic society, and that's critical right now. That was one of the statements she kicked off her interview with, and it really stuck with me. I personally believe that's a really critical thing. I think it's the glue that's going to hold all of the programs and learning that we do together in what are we creating as a society. And to kick off the interview, that really left a really positive impression with me. So with that, I know other board members wanted to say a couple things either about the process or the candidate. And so I'll pass it over to anyone who wants to share any thoughts.
It's been no small task to find someone to lead the direction of our school district and to decide on someone who we could entrust our children's future. I am thrilled that we are engaging Dr. Henning Piedmont as our superintendent. From my experience in other schools as a teacher and administrator, I have seen that it can be a common pitfall for many professionals involved in schooling and education to lose sight of the very significant point that we are creating institutions for children made of relationships that shape our children. And it was my impression from the outset of our interview process that Dr. Henning Piedmont genuinely does not lose sight of that central fact and is actually the lens to her inspirational approach of leadership and the thoughtful perspective on decision making. I'm hopeful for the positive direction of our school district with Dr. Henning Piedmont and look forward to the Board of Education working together with her for the success of our students. I warmly welcome her to our community and to the future she helps to chart in our schools.
That's pretty challenging to follow, in that I didn't
Why let you go now?
write a scripted welcome. The things I want to say, to Doug's point around the process and the work that we did with Bob and Joanne, the number of resumes reviewed, phone calls had, background checks, that were undertaken. I look towards our years to come, our next 3 years, our next 5 years, our next decade, and I am hopeful, truly hopeful, of building a district that, it's cliched, but something that I keep coming back to is moving from good to great. And I think we are really, really very good for lots of reasons. I think we have, and we saw it. We actually, something that comes to mind is the last meeting we held in this room around music. The passion that exists in this community around education, around athletics, around the arts. Oh, yes, hey Ken. The passion is just, it's tremendously high, and there are moments like that event that really demonstrate the depth of the passion. With the right leader to harness that passion, we have collectively the potential to go from good to great. My belief is that you are that right leader. And my hope and my goal in this role is to work with you to move that belief to reality. So welcome. We've got lots of work. My experience in doing this now almost 3 years is there will be ups and there will be downs, and there will be ups and there will be downs. I think we're all collectively, smarter, stronger, and really capable of, under your leadership, going from good to great. So welcome, and to the future.
You guys, 2 hard ones to follow. So much for your not prepared words. I will go back to what Doug said, and thinking about your early words in the first interview about training children to be good members of a democratic society. And I think what you're going to find is this is a great place to do that. I think the kids who go through this school system go out and are really engaged. Many of the children who go through this system go out to be really engaged members of society in a variety of ways. Maybe we can do even more and even better. I will second everything that Lauren and Tim said. I think it is really exciting. This is an exciting time. I also look forward to years of your being here and steering our ship. I think we have a lot of people who are really hopeful and eager to be working, to come together, to come back together, so that we can all move forward and really harness the good energy that's in this district. And there really, Lord knows there is really good energy in this district. And I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful for the year going forward. And I think, you know, we all welcome you, and we'll do our very best. Board members, parents, administrators, faculty, staff, custodians, everybody here, we're going to do our very best to make this a real success. I think we all know that what we really need is a leader here. At this point, we've gone through too many superintendents, and we need to be here to stay for the duration. So we're here with you, and welcome very much.
I just want to echo what they said as well, and you know, some of the words that I heard internally at interviews, or you know, from the feedback I heard from the community forum, were, you know, inspiring and impressive, and that's, you know, what I felt when I met with you as well. I think it's important for just the community to know that, at least for me, I didn't feel like we had to hire someone. I was willing to go with an intern superintendent again, and I was really looking for someone that would raise the bar and really take us to you know, a level that everyone expects to be. And to me, Valerie raises the bar, and so I'm really excited to work with you over the next, as Tim said, 5 to 10 years, hopefully. So welcome, congratulations.
We all just, do you want to say anything? No. Okay. Okay. So with that, Valerie, I want to pass it over to you. Patrick, what's the best microphone for? Oh, you've got one. Oh, came prepared.
Well, thank you all. I'm very excited, and thank you, board trustees, for such a warm welcome. You really do make me feel as though this is absolutely the place that I should be, and I am excited to be here and to work along with you and alongside you. So thank you very much for all of your kind words. For everyone else here, I'm so excited to be here. My passion is as an educator. I was a teacher first. I taught in Dyker Heights, Brooklyn. Anyone from Dyker Heights? Yeah, it's a great place. And spent been in a few places, all wonderful places that have really shaped me as an educator. Today is my grandmother's 101 birthday, 101 years old. But I didn't tell you she wasn't alive. But she's alive with me, because a lot of what I am and what I believe in has to do with the time that I spent with her as a little girl. She would only manage to go to 6th grade. She lived in Tennessee, so she lived through a lot of challenges there. You know, I don't have to describe what those are. But one of the things that she instilled in me was the belief that education can change society. It has the ability and the capacity to change your station, your belief in what you can do, and your sense of empowerment. And that's why I value it, and I chose the profession that I chose. This weekend I spent some time with some high school students, Elliot. Are you familiar with the FIRST robotics competition? It stands for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology. And it's a 3-day competition, and students not only build robots, but it's also these other soft skills that are really the hard skills: collaboration, teamwork, the ability to accept failure, working with people that you don't know, which again is one of those significant soft skills. I mean, at the top of the list, no matter what you read, one of the skills that students absolutely need to be successful is the ability to work well with lots of different people. So I look forward to being in a district that is committed to creating a vibrant learning community for all students, and that we focus on what the system is for students. School systems are for students. They're our clients. And we cannot forget that. So I look forward to being a part of a team with everyone. I look forward to meeting with everyone, meeting with not only the educators and staff and parents and children, the community at large, so that I can listen to you and hear what your beliefs are and what you want for the children of Hastings and how we all together can make that come to fruition. So thank you so much, and it's my honor to be here.
Okay, so let's take a break for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and we'll grab some cake, and we'll come back for public comment. So, now with the student report, Elliot is going to give us a report, and then we're going to move right into public comment. Okay, so with that, Elliot.
So there hasn't been a public meeting in a while, but the big...
Okay. Everyone, if we could have quiet, please, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So the big SU initiative of the last month, or previous month, because there's been a public meeting, was the Student Olympics / academic field day that was completely run by the SU. And that was a raging success, I think, was the general consensus among student body and faculty. And
Was it a one-day thing?
one day thing. And another thing, I guess, is going back to the participation in democracy and how important it is for young people to engage in participatory democracy. I was happy to learn that many of the older seniors actually did get out and vote on the 28th, or what was it, 28th? I got the day wrong. Maybe 28th.
Yeah.
So that was really great to hear.
That's good. And a special thank you to Dr. Wilson for introducing the concept of the Olympics, which I know you've done quite a bit over your career in a variety of places, and it's great to know that it was a success here as well, so thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great to see it. Yeah. Okay, so that will open up for public comments. Again, is there a mic? We'll just pass the mic, okay. With all comments, please just state your name if you live in Hastings, and please keep it to 3 minutes. Thank you.
I stand up. Good evening. I'm Victoria Hunt, and I'm here to read a statement for my husband, Tony Wan. Both of us are Hastings residents, but his work prevents him from being here present tonight. So, upon viewing the email about the Hastings-on-Hudson School Board meeting tonight, Monday, March 25th, 2019, reviewing the documents by the school treasurer, Maureen Calabaro's recommendation to sign the contract with H2M Architects and Engineering for the post-bond services, has led Tony and myself to continue questioning the school board's inadequate and short-sightedness in a rush to propose a vote on the $18.3 million bond we are now in debt to for the next 15 years. The explanation noted that H2OM will reduce its costs from 7%, $1,281,000, to 6.25%, or $1,143,750, is not what should be considered savings. I would argue that encouraging fair bidding for all construction projects would assist in keeping our financial boundaries known to all who bid on any project of this scope, equal to all. Furthermore, Tony spoke to the State Controller's Office, and they referred him to the Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District Policy Document, which he found the following. Section 6700, Purchasing. It is the goal of the board to purchase competitively, without prejudice or favoritism, to seek the maximum educational value of every dollar expended. Competitive bids or quotations shall be solicited in connection with purchases pursuant to law. The general municipal law requires that purchase contracts for materials equipment and supplies involving an estimated annual expenditure exceeding $20,000, and public work contracts involving an expenditure of more than $35,000 will be awarded only after reasonable bids have been received in response to a public advertisement soliciting formal bids. Purchases of the same commodity cannot be artificially divided for the purpose of avoiding the threshold. Similar procurements to be made in a fiscal year will be grouped together for the purpose of determining whether a particular item must be bid. It is under my understanding that $25,000 has been paid to H2M for the development of the scope of the work, so the first phase of this project was already out of compliance with the board's own purchasing policy. The second phase, encompassing $18.3 million, is obviously above the threshold, so the contract, quote, will be awarded only after responsible bids have been received in response to a public advertisement soliciting formal bids, end quote. If anyone on the board, I'm not sure if there's going to be a bid tonight, a vote tonight, but voting for such a non-bid contract to be awarded, this will be out of compliance with our own policy and within the general municipal law, section 103.1.
Victoria, can I just, you're over 3 minutes now, so.
Okay. So anyway, we urge that the contract not be awarded without a proper bidding process, and hope that the formal taxpayers' complaint to the state controller office is considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Hammerness. I live at 37 Hollywood Drive and have one child in the high school and 2 graduates. And I wanted to make a public comment related to an agenda item that's later on in the meeting, which is some of the work that the Diversity Committee has been making. And I just want to express some support for the work that the group has been making. It's a real privilege. I'm also a founder of the RISE Committee, and we're part of the Diversity Committee. And it's really a privilege to be a part of a group that has a clear and explicit focus on ensuring equitable experiences for all students. And I want to underscore the work that that committee has been doing. But I also want to call attention to 3 cases that we raised in our past meeting. And these were cases that were brought to us in RISE or to the district's diversity coordinator. And these were issues that arose within the last month that were topics of discussion in the meeting and a lot of problem solving, trying to think about how we would address these. And they're available in the minutes, so if anybody wants to take a look at the cases, you can. And I'll just quickly summarize them, although they're available online. One is a case in which an administrator or a teacher of color felt silenced when advocating for a student of color. Another was a case in which a family and a student of color in that family was being bullied. And it's a case that apparently has been unresolved, not addressed yet by the district. And another case in which teachers reported feeling inadequately prepared to teach hard history, the topic of slavery. And we, in the Diversity Committee, really feel like it's important to have a forum in which we can discuss these cases, and we felt like we've had the opportunity. The challenge, I think, for the committee is that there really are no clear next steps for the families and the children and the teachers involved. And relatedly, just given recent events in towns nearby around the teaching of slavery, many of you may have seen the incidents in Bronxville and in Mamaroneck, really reveal the importance for professional development for teachers and administrators to be able to do this work well. There are resources out there, some of which I've shared with the district, but in-depth professional development is so important for the teachers and administrators in our environment. And in a month in which many schools close to us are really dealing with similar issues, not only Mamaroneck and Bronxville, but also you think about Fieldston and the student protests, we really, I think, have the opportunity to be leaders in this district and to be proactive and to take real agency around some of these issues. So I just want to ask, I think, a who and a how question. So the first question is, how can we ensure a swift and active follow-up for these families and for the students and the teachers? And the second is who will follow up? So who will take responsibility to ensure that the steps and the protocols and the policies are clear? Because as I said, it wasn't clear sort of how families could go forward once we kind of brainstormed and problem solved. So I'm really asking how we can make sure that the teachers, the administrators, the children are going to feel supported, understood, and had advocates, and in turn that the teachers and the administrators also have advocates around these concerns that are being raised. I'm sorry I wasn't holding the mic quite exactly well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear? Yes. I'm Michelle Levoda. I'm at 70 Flower. I'm a Hastings resident. I have no prepared comments written down, but just a few things I wanted to mention. So first of all, I'm here again to voice my support for continuing foreign language in elementary school at Hillside. I've heard from a few different sources through the rumor mill that it is now included in the budget, but yeah, okay, thank you. So I just wanted to continue supporting that effort. And just a couple comments about the recent bond vote. And something that I just wanted to mention to the board. So as kind of time got closer to when the vote was scheduled, and it appeared that there was a lot of contention in the community and that it wasn't really a sure thing to pass, there was a group of, like a very small group of parents that I was a part of that, you know, kind of organized ourselves and hit all the preschools and hit the elementary school, and we're like handing out flyers and really trying to, you know, promote what we felt was a good decision, which was to vote for the bond. But I just wanted to kind of mention that, and I don't know how the board is kind of regulated by the state and what the board is and is not allowed to do in terms of communicating with the community. But it seemed like as I was standing at some of the preschools talking to parents, there was a lot of misinformation or just like gaps in information. There were a lot of parents of very young kids who have a whole, you know, lifetime of school in Hastings ahead of them who were on the fence about voting for the bond because they had heard, you know, just rumors about like, oh, well, are they adding an addition onto Sugar Pond? You know, where is all this stuff going? And there was just, and it was information that actually I didn't even have, even though I'd been to a lot of the informational meetings. So, you know, I was just thinking like in the future when there are, I mean, there probably won't be another bond vote for quite a while, but when there is the need for community support for initiatives in the school district, you know, maybe the board figuring out how to better communicate with the residents of the town. You know, I know that at Hillside there's beautiful artwork showing the plans for renovations, and there were certainly many meetings that the board had hosted, but the only people who are really going to go into Hillside or come to these meetings are people who have kids in the school district. And I think the people who needed to hear this information are those who are not engaged in the district. So whether it's like setting up a table at the farmer's market or, you know, just being in the community and getting the word out better and more clearly that way to people who aren't getting Board of Ed emails and who aren't coming to meetings, I think that would be something to think about. So that's just a little bit of feedback that I got because I was on the ground kind of trying to get the vote out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Afrin Alam. I'm a mother of a kindergartner and a kindergartner-to-be, so suffice to say I'll be here for the next 18 years with y'all, and it's my first public comment. And to say I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Henning Piedmont is an understatement. We are thrilled to have you, and we have some good work ahead of us, and I am really excited that you're here to lead them. Today I'm speaking as a parent of color to the Board of Ed, and I'm urging you that you prioritize professional development of our teachers and administrators around the issues of race, bias, and diversity. I've been a district parent only for 1 year, and in that short time I've experienced no shortage of love and respect from the teachers for our students. However, being a teacher during the era of a Muslim ban and other abundant hateful rhetoric against Black, brown, immigrant, and LGBTQIA communities requires a heck of a lot more of our teachers today. It will take active and conscientious community efforts to counter the constant messages of fear-mongering that our children are receiving today. And we cannot do that without well-trained teachers and administrators in our district. Thankfully, Hastings is becoming increasingly more diverse. One of our neighbors commented when we first moved here that we increased the Muslim population in our area by a whopping 100%. So with these positive changes in demographics, it will not be unusual to see a rise in incidents of bias and racism in our schools. Therefore, equipping our teachers and administrators with the right skills and tools simply cannot wait. We need to do this ASAP. Lastly, I want to leave you with a very obvious thought. Inclusion is not a privilege, and it's not just about a right. Inclusion should be a default state of being, but practicing it on the daily, like we expect our teachers and admins to do, requires very specific skill set and mindset. You can't just get it out of thin air or expect our teachers to have that without the support. For the people who spend the most amount of time with our children every day, our beloved teachers, let's make sure that we give them every possible tool to ensure they internalize and practice this concept of inclusion. And let's please set them up for success. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Further public comment. Okay. Every time I say stop, then someone stands up. So I gave it a good few seconds. So we will have another comment if you are here at the end of the meeting. I think a couple things that came up we will address later in some of the comments.
I was going to say, before we do the budget, I can just address B, because it was something that was going to be discussed tonight anyway, and I just want to also clarify some of the comments that were made about our purchasing policy.
Should we do that? Because I have a lot of comments on that.
No, I do, but can I start to address, the comments?
Do you want to jump that ahead of the budget?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, because, it makes sense, because in some ways...
So we're going to do the 4B before 4A, which is architecture firm selection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so just in regards of our policy, and I just want to clarify this. So we do bid out all of the things as required by our policy, as required by law. Professional services, which is in our purchasing policy, it is good practice to issue RFPs and we're required to do so for external and internal auditors. But in terms of other professional services, are not required to be bid out every year. So construction, anything like that, anything related to any building work or anything we purchase does go through that process. And we've never been cited for not following that process. But again, if you refer to the board policy, and it follows the state education law, and even our attorney who was here earlier, there's good practice, which is under the controller's report. So and I like to believe we do practice that, and in many occasions we do seek RFPs for professional services. The way we started to work with H2M was through an RFP process. It was in 2011 we awarded them the contract, and prior to that we had worked with 2 other architect firms, and after 10 years we decided to issue another RFP. So it's not completely unusual, especially for professional services such as that, or your attorneys, that you may issue an RFP and maybe work under the RFP for a number of years. But what I was suggesting to the board, again, trying to get some direction, was that there is a reason that we are legally allowed to continue to work with H2M. Again, this isn't, if you look, we did issue an RFP, which I provided to the board. I did not have a contract. I think I was trying to give them a recommendation of which way it can go, but certainly we can issue an RFP. An RFP for professional services, you're not required to go with the lowest bidder. They're required to meet the criteria of the RFP, and you do interviews, and then from that point, and there's a reason, I guess, the state allows you to, unlike when you're purchasing goods or doing construction, where you are required to award to the lowest bidder. For professional services, you're not required to do that. But I wanted to see where the board's comfort level is, and it was really just for timing. I was recommending to do an RFP for a construction manager, although I did one the last bond. I felt that, personally, I felt there was a reason to do another RFP for them, and that was never in question that we were going to issue one for those purposes. And in terms of the way that that's going to work, in terms of the fees that they're paid, that is, I even had spoken to other people prior to issuing that memo to the board. I did speak to other architecture firms locally that, and different people to get a sense. I called my different counterparts to see what they were paying. Many of them, and I think that was based on the recommendation to the board, I just said, well, you know, interestingly, a few other firms had said they would want 7 or 8% or 9% of construction costs. So, but what I was going to say to the board tonight, because again, I made a recommendation because of our timeliness issue, I think ultimately we can do an RFP and award it, continue to work with H2M, which may be where the board decides. I actually did prepare RFPs for both this week because I certainly, but I think we have to be cognizant that we are in a very short time frame. I'm going to come in and interview them, and if the board, I think the time frame would require us to work through the April break, which I'm fine with. But it was a recommendation based on the timeliness thing. And again, I don't, like the attorney shared with anyone who's in executive session tonight, that it is not a requirement, it's good practice. So I just want to be clear that we do follow, and I can tell you that even when people make small purchases that are not, and it's unless you are buying something that you can't find from any other provider, even when we buy anything in the school district, we go through that full process. So I just want to assure you, and if not, we're piggybacking on bids. We're, you know, the board, as you know, like any type of bid, we're constantly either going off a state contract. I mean, that's just something that I know it's a little confusing because, you know, there's different kind of sections of that, but I can assure you we do every year, we issue RFPs for any type of plumbing, electric, landscaping. We do them every year. That is something that you approve every year. We issue those RFPs every year. We vet those RFPs every year. We're constantly doing them. I mean, it is the board's decision. It's a professional service. Typically, the people work for the board direct, or, you know, work for you. And I do think I would agree with, you know, I am one to feel it is there is something, and that's why after hearing some people's concerns, I prepare the RFPs, I put them together, and I'll give you an updated timeline based on that.
Can you, I don't know if you're able to do it now, but can you help us understand the timing impacts?
So, I mean, right now, after we did the bond, and I know the board was, you know, extremely busy just with the superintendent search, and I think some of the bond kind of conversation with the rescheduling of a bunch of board meetings, and I had kind of sent you the memo, as you know, and we did attach it here, to kind of give you the options, right? To give you, like, this would be something I could, you know, we did issue an RFP. I feel comfortable in calling around that. It's a competitive price. We work with them, and there is obviously a timeliness issue in terms of moving forward, or we can do an RFP and then just extend it a bit. So in terms of the timing, if we issue an RFP, and with the idea would be it would hit the papers this week, you know, the papers, and again, you don't, even in RFP, you could just send it to people. You're not required to advertise this, but we're, you know, have it ready for advertisement. We would issue it with a fairly short time frame, and again, most people can respond pretty quickly. This is not a construction document where they have to go through bid specs. This is just really professional hours, services fee. They doesn't really require them to do like any type of large response to it. So the idea would be that we would go out March 29th with an advertisement and release date for RFP. We would get a confirmation of participation in April 2nd, which means that, and again, what I would typically do is I put in the newspaper, but we would also, I have a list of firms and I would just send it out, like all local firms. We send the RFP once it's in the newspaper to make sure that people have it. We would look to have the RFPs come back to us on April 11th, a response to the RFP. And then we would have an RFP review period and interviews of selected firms April 11th through the 16th, with a decision and award date of April 23rd and a contract start date of April 24th. Which is...
But I think you were asking Doug more in terms of...
But I'm saying, so anything...
The time pressure is because of other things that we have to get going by a certain time, correct?
Right.
I mean, it's going to push us out a month from where we are today. I mean,
so Maureen, look, I understand. I think the concerns that are raised that we have to just keep front and center are that there were a number of people around the bond who were not thrilled with H2M and had questions even about some of the design. And I do think that we can still work with whoever the architects are for the facilities committee and with people from the community input, even though we don't have a big time frame. I think we have to do that. I know I've raised some issues with you about things in the design. And the other thing is just about being transparent, so that
No, and
people
I'm
feel
fine,
like
and I
we're being
understood that. You know,
transparent.
the thing is, there are two ways to get to it. I just want to be clear, though, and I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable that I can, you know, when you talk about RFPs, I mean, that is something we do take pretty, you know, seriously. And there are times, you know, that, you know, it is definitely a best practice for sure. And I guess it is always, especially if there is concerns, and there seems to be concerns about, I think actually whatever the responses it'll make the board feel even more comfortable with, you know, when you award a contract, you'll see, you know, I think you'll see that what you'll get back is going to be fairly consistent with the numbers you have seen. So, I mean, even if it's just for that purpose, so people don't think that either we're paying somebody, just kind of handing in a contract to them. But I just, again, wanted to be clear that, and in my experience in a lot of districts, like you know, it is a good practice, but it's not unusual for people to issue RFPs, and if they're happy with the architects, they kind of just stay with it, you know. And
I guess the real question, as Jody was pointing at, is if we award a contract on April 24th, what is the impact on our ability to meet the June 2020 construction deadline?
I mean, I think you do have to push it out. I mean, I'm hopeful that when they built the timeline, like anything, you know, you're always going to add in a few weeks of contingency, which I think their timeline reflected. I think I had mentioned tonight, if that at this point, that's going to be my recommendation, because certainly, you know, I don't want people to think, I mean, I just want to make sure everyone understands it's legal, but if people feel that's the best practice to follow, and it makes people feel more about the transparency, and also if people are interested in seeing maybe some other firms and getting some other ideas, obviously that we're going to move that forward. But I would just bump out the timeline. It probably would be, we'd be looking at a like August completion date.
Completion date or start?
Oh, I'm sorry. It would, because we had hoped to have the construction then completed by like July of the year that we want to open the building, which is 22. So we would be cutting it fairly close, but other than that, I mean, at this point.
One of the things that we talked about was bidding in January and February to get prices. So this pushed us back. So we're not,
it might push.
Saving money on architect and spending more money on construction.
I mean, that's a risk. You know, I mean, I guess we don't know definitively like how much it'll impact us. I mean, I think it may push us, I think it's going to push us out a few weeks. And that's why the timeline's very tight.
Can I respond?
Sure.
So I did a lot of research, not surprisingly. And I want to add to what Tori said. I understand that because it's an architect and that's a specialized service, it does not come under the heading of competitive bidding, but we do have a policy that refers to what do we do when formal competitive bidding is not required. There still is a requirement on our part to get the best price, and that's not just our policy, that's a codification on our end of the general obligation laws of the state of New York. So what that section says, goods and services which are not required to be done through competitive bidding will still be procured in a manner so as to ensure prudent and economical use of public monies in the best interests of the taxpayers to facilitate the acquisition of goods and services of maximum quality at the lowest possible cost under the circumstances, and to guard against favoritism, improvidence, extravagance, fraud, and corruption. As I read that still puts an obligation on us that we still have to search for the lowest number. We're not obliged to take it, but let me go on. I have a lot to say. Sorry, I've tried to patiently listen to everybody else. I've also read a lot of the reports of DiNapoli in his comptroller's audits, and he is dinging schools for relying on old RFPs and for not following this process. For example, Roy Montesano's the school just got dinged for this, and there are many. I can send you 5 or 6 schools we know that got dinged for using the same old architect that they've used for years. On top of that, the RFP, the old RFP that we had, to me, does not apply to this. It talks about experience in converting non-instructional space to instructional space, or designing a classroom. This is very different, and I'm going to say it's very different to the people who live near Hillside. So listen up, people, because the design, if you look at the design, I actually went out and mapped it out with my garden sticks, okay? It takes up that whole lower playground where there's a climbing structure, and it goes almost all the way to the fence. Then there's going to be a tapering of the land, right where there's a very steep slope as well as a rushing stream. What's going to happen there, and what's going to happen to the people who live downstream? Is there going to be a water issue? So I would like an architect that has extensive background in dealing with that kind of circumstance. Our village has rules on this. We're not required to follow them, but I'm going to guess we're really strong on the environment, that what our village says is probably pretty good practice. So I don't know that H2M, I mean, they may be the right firm for us. They may not. I don't know what their experience is. Also, I have heard complaints about the design, that it's very uninspired, it looks like a prison, it's going to be too big, it's out of proportion, and I would like to see other designs. I saw Scarsdale in their bond, they switched architects midway through because they weren't happy with designs and they wanted an architect who had experience with a building from that time. I think it'd be really cool. Let's see what different designs come up. I will also add, I think as Tori pointed out, that there were a lot of issues concerning the numbers that H2M gave us. In fact, I even wrote to you, I don't know if I ever got an answer, that the soft costs put in H2M's estimate came to about 36%. And I saw Mamaroneck. Mamaronecks were 25. I don't know if it got to me, but Mamaroneck with our former, business guru.
If you say it, that is because I know what you said when I spoke to the people, that wasn't correct.
Yeah, let's just finish. So anyway, in any event, it was 10% less. No, much more, sorry. Probably about a third less. 36% were our people and 26. All I'm saying is there are different numbers that are going to come from.
I spoke to them and they said that when they were like, who's interpreting these numbers? Because I'm just saying, the way they bundled, because they have asbestos costs. If you look at their bids, they broke it out. We have things that are built in, and the way their soft cost is independent.
Okay, all right, so let's take Mamaroneck out, but I would like to hear other bids, I hear about, you can go to somebody out of state. Anyway, there are a lot of issues, and just a few other things. In terms of selecting the architect, I also think it's important, Doug mentioned in his interview with the Enterprise about forming a committee with community members, and I think that's a great idea. And, I'm not talking about your average parent. I think we have architects, we have designers, and I would like them involved in helping to select the architect, because we live in a terrific town with talented people. And I also think it's important because, as we know, the vote was not a mandate. It was not a landslide. There were a lot of people who had a lot of concerns. And as Jody said, I think the more transparency we bring to this process, the better. So if it delays us a month, but maybe we get a better price, that's really good. Because right now, this is 2.55% on your taxes. If we could lower, we don't have to go up to that if we get a better bid. So I know I'm making a long statement, but obviously I feel strongly about this. And I also feel that the state comptroller is not going to be happy with us if we don't put this out for bid.
Well, and just so you know, I already notified the newspapers of this bid going out this week. So that was going to be my recommendation tonight. When I tried to answer back, I was told I know we don't want to have anything that violates open meeting law. So I did not respond back, even though I could have 2 weeks ago, that I already had the RFPs, completed, because I didn't want, so I didn't want to get because that was the recommendation tonight, and I had the RFPs.
And one other thing, and I'm glad we're talking about this, because I'm learning a lot about RFPs and bidding through this. I enjoy reading the comptroller's audits. I think maybe it would be good for the Finance Committee to see the RFPs that have been...
That line's ever been used.
I know. It is who I am. What do you want? Anyway, maybe if at the Finance Committee meetings we could see, what's coming through RFPs, just because I think it's good for us to see how everything is made. I think it's important for us as board members.
But I, not again saying that but I can tell you, we were ordered by the state control, so that was one of the areas. I mean, we had a lot of again, I hear you and I agree with you, and I'm actually for myself, for my own self, it's better that we issue the RFP, because I'm the one who will have to answer, for it. And certainly I'm all for doing it, and we do try, but I can assure you that all of our we issue RFPs and bids for any type of service we think we may need to do. Just I just want you to know that we're not, you even had asked me a lot of questions this week, and I've been trying just to assure you that we do follow. I mean, I know that you were very concerned because you said the village had, really.
Can we just get a sense of where everyone else is? Because if we're all already on the same page and we're just talking
Sure.
here, then let's just keep moving.
Yeah. I just have a quick question, or I hope it's a quick question, about the criteria for the selection process, because if we're not required to take necessarily the lowest bidder, what necessarily is going to be the criteria? And I would want to make sure, for example, I know that H2M is currently under contract with the Irvington School, so they have experience with school design and with making sure design is appropriate for students and for children, for the perspective of students, for teachers' use, and so I don't know if, since this is my first process in going through this, are the architects replying to the RFP only people that work with schools, or?
Well, actually, Maureen, may I just give a quick answer before you did? I think I'm glad you raised that question. It's nice that you did it because you're the head of the policy committee. I was going to recommend that many boards have adopted NYSBA's policy on what do you do when you're hiring somebody who falls into that category of a specialized skill, and they have a sample policy, and I read it, and it's really good, and it even goes to our value of diversity, because it even says you should be looking at the high-level people to see is there diversity among there, and I did look at an H2M. It didn't check that box at all. But anyway, I think we should consider perhaps adopting, or we should consider that policy as something we may want, because it is a hole in our policy right now.
Well, typically, I mean, anytime you do an RFP, obviously, they have to be able, I think the last time one of the criteria that we had put in RFP, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in there this time, but we were looking for a firm that also had on-staff engineering, and which is not always the case. And again, it's always school experience that you're going to be looking for, and similar type work. And you can say, they have to demonstrate, and typically when you're interviewing them, they'll come in and bring in examples of their work in different schools that they've worked for, and all that is to be taken into consideration. I mean, I think that's obviously, you would want somebody who has worked on similar projects, and although I would say that you definitely want a firm there's some firms that do wonderful work, and they have a lot of, good work done over Westchester, but you definitely want people who are familiar with renovating older buildings, because putting up a brand new building, like there's a lot of really talented architects who do a lot of like the private schools, and they do a lot of great work, but that doesn't always translate to like modifications to like older buildings. So typically you're looking for H2M. Again, there's quite a few firms, and there's about 4 or 5 that are typically the ones that kind of do the majority of the schoolwork in the area. And obviously, like I said, what you do is, in addition to putting it out in the newspaper, once the ad's released, you would send it to them in the hopes that they would respond to the RFP, because you know that they, like I've already asked around to my colleagues, like some firms that they're working with, and the contact information, so I could send the RFP over to them once it's publicized.
So Maureen, one of the things that's a little confusing to me is, so we've had a bond that we voted on, and with all of the work that we did on it, we presented pictures and drawings and talked about what we were going to do.
But they were just like not, what has to be, the bond has to, in terms of, if we just speak about Hillside, people voted on that it would have a cafeteria for class, it's more about what the deliverables are. The idea of the way it looked was never, it was just trying to, those drawings, and we did the same thing when we were doing the track and field, I mean, part of it was to give people a sense of what it kind of could look like, but it wasn't, we weren't tied to like that it exactly had to look that way.
I think all the drawings actually said illustrative on them.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, if this decision, judging the RFPs is going to happen soon, can we advertise tomorrow for people to apply to our community board? Because like I said, I'd like those architects and designers to be part of that.
And quite frankly,
is it community board? Can't it just be the facilities committee?
Well, we already had the people who are on the initial facilities committee who were helping to, prior to the 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago when we started, there were quite a few people on that were both architects and engineers, and I know even Eva
Well, I have had another architect reach out to me and said that he would absolutely love to be involved.
No, we can, but I'm saying I know there are a couple people, so we can definitely send it out, and I think you definitely want it to be similar to, like, you wanted somebody who has that level of background. But just so you know, I mean, the RFP, like I mentioned, I set the dates, we have to do that review the week of April break. because of the time frame. Because I do think there's still going to be a lot of work to be done, especially people want to, like, we also want to engage people on the design and all that. So, you know, first and foremost, we have to get this, and then,
Maureen,
yeah.
is the review something that has to be done in person, or something that, are you looking at documents together, or are you actually
No,
bringing
you
the
interview
firm to-
people. You
Okay.
interview the firms come in, and they do a presentation. So, I mean, again, although it's not ideal, you know, I think it's important not to waste another, which would almost be 10 days
So
with the weekend.
let's just, I mean, we could keep talking, but we've got a lot on the agenda here. It seems like, it feels like we're moving towards a place where, I mean, I don't think, you know, not doing an RFP is the hill to die on here, even if we save a couple of weeks. I mean, I think there's a lot of value as everyone's laid out. So does everyone feel comfortable with moving forward with the RFP process? Yep. Okay, I don't think we're going to take an official vote, do we? No.
And just so you know, that week will also be interviews for the construction managers as well.
And will you put in things in there about the steep slope and the stream? Oh, and also on the committee, I think it would be helpful to have somebody from the Village's Conservation Commission there, because we are dealing with village, well, not village land, but we're going to impact village land, or we may.
Well, or we can just consult with them before we decide.
Right, I think it would be good on a number of levels to involve the Conservation Committee, just in terms of our relationship with the village, and making sure, you know, those people know those woods better than anyone we hire will. And I think that their input could help stop any damage that may happen to people who live near this construction.
But I just, you know, the RFP is really just to engage people to come and bid on the work. We're not going to, that is not going to speak about the design or, no, the committee, you're talking about like after we select the two people who are going to be working on it, that's when all those other discussions.
Should be involved in that. Conservation doesn't necessarily have to, but they should be involved in after that.
It'll be after the firms are selected.
We've spoken, and I think we're just getting around to it now. You know, the architectural RFP is one piece of it, but there's a broader just timeline that we need to lay out over the next.
Right.
What does the next 12 months look like, and just get some real clarity on that. When does the design committee get chartered? What are their meetings? Just getting that visually down, I think, would be very helpful. So that's something we can work on.
Can we ask in the RFP, can we basically put forward our target use date and get back from these independent architectural firms what their timeline looks like? I just want to see if there's any difference in timeline, what they're proposing, or if somebody comes in and says,
I have a back door in the state.
you know, this just
getting the documents approved.
I mean, these are all, so you issued the RFP, they're required to meet certain criteria in the RFP, and then during the interview process is where I think these things can be hammered. Yeah, they'd be, yeah.
You know, I'm rethinking. I think somebody from the Conservation Commission, they would know the questions to ask about these issues. So I think having them on at that point would be good with the architects. The other thing I would say is, can we try to schedule the interviews so that people who have jobs, you know, full-time jobs, can try to make it? I mean, I'm not saying it has to be at 8 o'clock, but, you know, maybe 4 o'clock or sometimes, you know,
sure.
So we can have these experts there to help us.
But the one, again, I just want to say, we're not going to be getting...
This is the biggest decision we make. This is what's going to guide the whole thing.
No, I know, but I just want to also mention that, again, this is just to select a firm that you think has the ability. We're not going to get into the design of the plan. That is not going to, I mean, obviously, we give them a list of what the bond scope is. It's included for their information, and obviously they'll probably do some, well, now I notice, I think a lot of our things may not be on the website, but in terms of the actual, you know, speaking about the slopes, that's where the design, like, once you select the firm that you think is the best, like, those kind of conversations are not going to be part of the interview process. I just can't imagine that they could have enough information without a survey, without all the pieces to speak to that.
But you can ask about their experience in dealing with that, and that's where I think we need the experts to be able to ask and assess the answers, because everyone will have an answer, but the quality of those answers will be different, and I wouldn't be able to discern the differences, but an expert
Why don't we
would.
make up the questions as part of the process? Because I don't think we're going to kind of get to all the bottom of that here, but it looks like it's a very specific week you're targeting, April 11 to 16 to do the interview, right? So is that the week of break, or is that the week after break?
It's before break and it's during break.
and it carries over.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something to keep in mind as well. I mean, so I feel like we have enough information for you to put a plan together, Maureen. Taking everyone's thoughts into consideration. Let's just get that down on paper so that we can see it and circulate that around. And you know, it looks like an award date of April 24th. That'll be what it'll
Right,
be.
and the one thing, like Lauren had mentioned, I mean, all the firms that you do work with, and I don't know any school that wouldn't do it. They have to have, like, understand how to work with the state education department, because it is different. No, it is. No, but to your point, because I was just thinking about the RFP document actually speaks to that, the ability to do all the forms, because that would not be something that is familiar to all, you know? So, no, you're right.
Okay, let's keep rolling here. I think we've come to a decision. School budget, 4A. Want to talk about that?
Is this on? Oh, yes. Okay, so tonight this is just a kind of an update of where we've left off the last time, and just kind of reflects. There are a couple small things that I can kind of highlight since the last time we met, and it's just based upon some new things that are currently occurring that will be carried over to next year. So again, we are on schedule. We hope we can have some additional bond discussions between now and the time the board adopts the budget, and then the budget hearing of May 7th, and the budget bond vote on May 21st. We've been just reflecting on what was our guiding principles in developing the budget, and it was to develop the budget with the lowest increase, to continue to build an affordable and sustainable organization, and maintain a reasonable level of reserves. Just for tonight, just to kind of remind us, I haven't, typically I always include enrollment information, but I hadn't prior to tonight. We've been talking a lot about when people have mentioned, why is their budget going up? We're still seeing that kind of consistent increase of enrollment across the board. And even, we anticipate to be at 1736 next year. The kindergarten number is based upon the demographic study that with the live birth information, but we're keeping our eye on that number as we continue to register for our incoming kindergarten class. This is where we left off in terms of our proposed budget, which currently is increasing our spending at $720,000 over the previous year. And it includes some of the reductions in the reserve appropriations, as we've been discussing, in terms of our ability to sustain that level of funding, and the reflection of the decrease in state aid. That brings our tax rate increase would be at a 0.33%, and the property tax change in terms of levy is at 4.03, which does fall under the state's required tax cap calculation. Just to remind the board where, what makes up that tax cap calculation and how we get to those numbers, and there's different factors that were given to us by the state, some which includes our tax-based growth factor, which is unique to Hastings, our pilot information, the current allowable levy growth factor in terms of from the state is 2%. And where that kind of leaves us overall in terms of where we are in our proposed levy as opposed to what we could levy is we are currently at $250,000 lower than the tax rate. I will mention at this point, I know Lisa, you had asked at one point, if we were to levy the additional $250,000, it's about a 0.4% increase on the tax rate for individuals. No, I'm saying $250,000, like if we were to go to the full levy limit.
So it would be like 0.75%.
So here where we're at like a 0.33, that would be up around, it would still be, the tax rate increase for individuals would still be less than 1%. So that's what the $250,000 represents. Welcome. Sorry, I know you had asked that the last time. Okay, so this is a summary of proposed staffing. I've been showing it in terms of all the different moving pieces with the increases and decreases. And what I tried to do tonight is to try to summarize the best I could in terms of what is actually being proposed at each building. So at Hillside, our budget that we're putting forth currently reflects our 6 sections at every grade level, K4, It includes the music to be delivered in terms of the music staffing at Hillside is to remain the same as it is currently. It also includes FLES being included in the staffing for next year. I believe that the decision has been made, though, to change it to be a 1 through 4 program. No, I think 1 through 4. I know Amy met with Madam Bertacci and Colette, and that it was discussed. And because I think that in terms of just offering at the 3rd and 4th grade level, they weren't sure about the scheduling piece of how that would be. So I think in terms of doing the curriculum, they're going to, I think that allows for 1 hour per week per grade level with that, with the full-time FLES teacher. So Amy actually was here earlier, and she can come back at another meeting to discuss that a little bit further. But just to kind of tell you what that's what I've been, it looks to be what is being proposed in terms of the FLES for next year. We are shared staffing model for teacher assistants. We're still working out the logistics of that, but I think we've been speaking about, with the scheduling that the hope would be that it may not be a 50% cut, but we would be using our teacher assistants in a more efficient manner, working between, instead of being assigned one to each ICT classroom, we're hoping to be able to share the teacher assistants across grade levels, or across, not a grade, but one person would have 2 assignments. The budget also includes an addition of 3 ICT teachers, which would be in the 1st, 2nd, and 4th grade of next year. That would bring our K-5, that would, what this reflects is that we would have 2 full-time ICT classes at each grade level, K-5. We also, we've been talking about aides, which were being increased and decreased, and what I'm trying to just summarize here tonight is that what we proposed in kindergarten in terms of reducing some of those aides in some of those classrooms is reflected in here, but each kindergarten classroom will have a full-time staff member, whether it be a teacher assistant or teacher aide. But there is still a need for some students to hire, even with shifting different aides around, we're still going to need to hire 2 additional aides for classrooms and for students at Hillside. And it still includes a math support position for RTI support and some PD around math at Hillside next year. At the middle school and high school, and this has changed since the last time you have seen this number, it was at one point we were looking to increase the literacy staff reading specialist position. They were looking at a 0.2 increase, but there is now a need to make that a 0.4. My recommendation is that we had, as the board knows, a small amount of contingency in the budget. So instead of increasing the budget, the idea would be that this money would come out of any contingency money that is currently available. But this one is really driven on, they've had some meetings, and they feel that with some students coming up from the elementary school that they need to have, this is both a middle school, high school kind of increase in literacy staffing. And now at the middle school, high school again, we're now at either a 0.6 or 0.8 E&L increase. And again, that number actually just changed today. We were at 0.6 the last time. It looks more likely that it's going to be a 0.8 next year. And again, my recommendation would be that we did have a little bit of contingency money that, we're just going to have to tighten up some of those other hirings, and we'll have to be able to handle that extra 0.2 on the E&L. On the 0.4 is the diversity coordinator position, which would be increasing the current teacher who has a 0.2 release time to have a 0.6 release time to do this work as a teacher on assignment.
I just want to say that I'm really happy to see that we're doing the 0.4 increase, because right now Janice is doing it 0.2, and she's doing so much more. I mean, she's definitely much more than the 0.2, and it's really just been great to see how incredibly effective she is. That this position has been. We're talking about things we never talked about before. So anyway, just to give an added support for that.
Right. And that one, we've been fortunate that one has kind of stayed through since the beginning of the budget discussion. So again, this is just, these are additional, this is kind of just gives you a sense. I mean, at Hillside, I just wanted to be clear because I think there was some confusion with the aides being added in one area and then being taken. So I just wanted to kind of summarize. And what this really reflects, as you will see, is that in terms of our current staffing, our current, people who are on staff, that everyone will have a position next year. So even if there are some movements with teacher assistants and teacher aides, it may actually even result in a need to hire another teacher assistant, but it would be within the special education budget, or we have a little bit of flexibility with depending on some of the placements. Again, this charts have been in the budget all along, just to kind of show what our current ICT classrooms, our enrollment, and in terms of what our percentages of special education and general education would be and kind of what it looks like for next year. I know that the board requested to get an update from Laura in April prior to adopting your budget to make sure that some of the projections listed in terms of numbers of students in ICT classrooms to just kind of get a sense of if that's in fact how the numbers are turning out. So I think, from what I understand, Laura said that she will come and update the board if there needs to be a change of this. But again, we're moving forward. In our budget currently reflects having the 2 ICT classrooms. And if there would be a change, a reduction, then she would be able to report that prior to your adoption of the budget. Again, these are just areas of reduction that are pure reduction. Those are the both in the area of technology. We're reducing our emerging technology staff developer to 1 day a week, and we're also reducing some of our land support staff. Again, revenue summary, these numbers have not changed. Just kind of highlight some bulleted numbers, a decrease in state aid, mostly due to some old building level aid dropping off, and some of it's expense-driven aids, and you spend less, you get less. Transfer of 1.7 of appropriated fund balance. And again, the different recommendations for reserve money to be used to offset next year's budget. Just kind of to highlight where we're getting some of our increases in miscellaneous revenue is coming from some tuition from other districts to some of our special programs at Hillside, as well as the interest rate on deposits and investments has gone up significantly, thankfully. Again, just to kind of, this is just to break out some of the lines and, custodial charges actually, I need to update that number for the estimated year. As you know, that although from time to time we've been able to get some additional revenue from outside sources using our buildings to either do filming year to year, we can't really anticipate that. So we're just reflecting here our kind of status quo, and if we're, when those opportunities arise, and they work for us, we'll take them. Again, these are just different categories. You'll see how the state aid is dropping down. The governor, obviously, the budget's not finalized yet, but I don't know if we can really anticipate a large increase of funding there. But certainly if there's additional funds come available, we could always come back and revisit our state aid projection numbers and increase it if we end up having an increase in foundation aid. Sales tax, there's been some talk about increasing the rate of sales tax. I'm sure everyone has seen in the county. The county executive is proposing that. I mean, although it's not great for everybody individually, if that in fact does happen, it's not reflective here because that hasn't been decided as of yet, but it would, I believe if the rate goes up, we would probably get an increase of about $60,000. So, we'll see if there's a change that we can implement in this budget before the board adopts it. We'll do so. Again, this is just fund balance and reserves. We've been kind of talking about it and how, what we have. And again, we're very fortunate that we do have fund balance and have money to pay off obligations as they come due. Certainly the tax cert reserve where we had, you can see the balance there where we had the $2.7 million at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th in 2016. And we anticipate that by the end of June 2020 that balance will be closer to $600,000. These are all obligations for the most part of people who grieve the taxes, and these are funds due back to them. And if you don't have a reserve there, you do have to bond and borrow to pay back those expenses. So as we've been talking about the ability, we're doing as Dr. Wilson, we talk about a soft landing, trying to wean our way off of reserves and use them appropriately to balance budgets, but also keep in mind that money, if we're not replenishing it, it does decrease and it's not available for budgets. Just to remind people, as we talk about our budget to budget and tax rate increases, if you look historically, and we can go back even to this chart starts in 2004, 2005, and to see where we had been as a district, and I can, tell you at those times that, interestingly, the retirement rates were much more favorable at that time, and as was state aid, and kind of where our tax rate has gone. And you can see we're at a very high point. Even prior to that, it was higher than that. Our budgets to budgets back then were 11%. We've been actively bringing that number down, and the tax rate increases with that. And you can see that actually when the that new property came online, I know there's some people trying to understand where did that money go with the additional assessment value that came onto our rolls. And effectively, it actually, if your taxes were to not have changed and nothing else had changed, we did see a decrease in our tax rate with the increasing of assessments. So we've been trying to consistently keep the tax rate, if you can see in this, the highest it was as of late was 13-14 at 3.52%. But other than that, we've been negative some years and less than 1%. So, and that trend would continue with our proposed 0.33% tax rate increase next year. And that's it for this evening.
Maureen, thank you, as always. I know this is no small task. I wanted to, you didn't raise it tonight. We've talked about it on other nights. There was a discussion that the PTSA has offered to fund some of our work, I think to the tune of about $30,000 plus. As I think about that, I have some concerns about it, and I'm coupling that with our discussion about do we want to go a little higher towards the cap. I love when the PTSA helps out for one-offs, for doing the television studio, for doing the playground equipment. But what the PTSA had always done is if they sponsor a program like salsa dancing, the idea was we do it, once, maybe more, with the idea that it gets into the budget. I am fearful that pulling it out, like I know salsa is one of them, pulling it out of the budget, having the PTSA do it has two negative implications. One, it's less money for the PTSA to fund other programs. And two, it's now not part of our budget. And that way, we don't have the room built in already. So to me, it makes salsa dancing seem like it might be on the chopping block for next year unless the PTSA wants to pony up the money again. So I think what I would offer up is to those PTSA donations that are not, whatever, a thing, that are for a program that's something that we've adopted already. Perhaps we want to say, let's raise our budget by the incremental $5,000 for the salsa or whatever it is, so that we ensure that it stays in the budget.
Yep. So where that discussion, yes. So it was about $30,000, but I do believe it may have included, that number did include the playground equipment money. So I think it was about $15,000 and change, of the amount. I think that, very generously when they saw all of our budget discussions, they were saying, what can we do to fund you? I mean, there's different things. I can go back and look at the budget, and maybe there's something else that they can help offset for next year's budget that
like a one-off.
A one-off, right? That then I can, I think in terms of the salsa dancing, some of those items, if I recall, they were partnering with us on some of the costs, and so we still had some of the money in our budget. So there were a couple. What I'll do is let me go back. I think there are other areas that if they would be willing to fund that could potentially be one-offs next year that would then just kind of help us.
And maybe, again, we have room.
Sure.
We're not,
right.
I love that the PTSA came to us, but I also want to be genuine with them that we, right now we have a tax rate of 0.33. We can go to 0.43, and maybe we don't need that extra money from them. And then they can use that for new projects when teachers say, hey, I want to do this, because that really is what that money's for. It's really not for offsetting our budget, so maybe we want to take that on. Again, in terms of a $50+ million budget, we're talking somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000.
Right. And it was just, again, it was just some of the things. So, absolutely, I can go back and look, and I'm sure there are, some things that are in the budget that maybe they could help us offset, and that would also either that or go up a bit in the budget. Again, the board still has some time between now and the adoption of the budget, and I'm sure. As even I mentioned tonight, although as we had talked about, there was a little bit of wiggle room in numbers, so that's why I didn't come back and adjust it for a 0.2 in the E&L and a 0.2 in the reading, because I kind of felt like, all right, we'll just have to kind of factor that out of, we work the numbers and the contingency, or just be really mindful of when we're hiring our new staff of the overall cost. But there will be a point, I mean, you're still under, but there may be things between now and the time of the budget adoption that you may come up that will require you, or you may consider going up to the cap. I think that's where you want it to be, and obviously there'll be more discussion, but I had mentioned, like, if there's something with the sales tax, there may be other, areas where if we get some additional revenues, then you can still stay under the cap and maybe just accomplish it that way. I mean, if there is more money that comes from the state, so that's, obviously as those numbers become available, you can, consider making some modifications to it. But I just wanted to kind of update you on what we've been talking about in terms of, and assure you that, well, no one is going to be laid off either, which I think was a concern.
Yeah, which is good. And of course, I feel like I say this every time, and you know this well. I appreciate staying below the cap and trying to maintain that $250,000 because the reality, and I really say this for the board, not you, as I said, you know this well, it's not a 0.33 budget to budget. It's still a quite meaningful, it's a non-trivial, is maybe the phrase that I'll use, increase in budget to budget, and for the, I believe, third year running, we're the beneficiary of an increased overall assessed value of our village, which is what's enabling us to do this. So I think that there's some tremendous value in maintaining budget, what's the word that I'm looking for, discipline, and not going to the max because we simply can, recognizing that we are, as I said, the beneficiaries of an assessment increase. So I would like to, speaking at a personal level, I'd like to look at that $250,000 as only if we absolutely need it and can't figure it out any other way. To this point, you've managed a tremendous number of constituencies and put forward, I think, what is a very solid budget that does maintain, programs and positions that the community's felt strongly about. So hats off to you for doing that. You do year in and year out. And if we can hold the line.
Sure. No, I think that was where I just kind of wanted to give you an update. And although there's moving pieces, we're in pretty good shape. Like right now, we're in good shape. And if anything, there could be, let's hope, a couple breaks that go our way that may give us a little bit more room. And then if there is something that comes up that you may need to, like, either put in, whether you decide to fund it or to say, well, let's put a little bit of contingency if, in fact, we need a grade level, we need another teacher, something like that, we could always look to do that as well once, we get some additional information.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks in good shape. We still have a few, like you said, a few more weeks left. So.
But I think we are in good shape. That's kind of, I think we're in a good place right now.
So I wanted to move on to the assistant superintendent conversation. I know, Charlie, you had mentioned that you maybe wanted to just follow up on a comment from the public. I don't know if you want to do that.
Well, sure. If I may, I just wanted, there were a couple of comments, and I'd like to respond. And I just want to salute our lady here. I'm sorry I didn't get your name, first name, but who spoke to the diversity issue and say that how much your work is appreciated. And in fact, it was just brought up. Actually, I also wanted to say that, and as testified here a moment ago, we were talking about the expansion of Janice's role next year, which is another example of the value placed on this issue and what needs to be done. I have to tell you that with respect to the trilogy of stories, that I became involved in one of those, and it's done. It's been dealt with. One of the frustrations I have, I wish people would more often come to me with their problems sooner, because if you bring it to the superintendent, it'll get done, and I'm sure that's going to be true next year. And I'm seeing her shake her head yes, but here's the thing. Look, I think that the district can improve. In fact, in my strategic plan I'm writing, is one of my major recommendations. It has to be more of staff development in this area. And in fact, Denise again did a terrific job. We devoted the teacher professional development this past week on that. So we're doing it. We'll continue to do it. There's a lot more we can do. Should be done. Will be done. And but in general, I just wanted to also thank you for your efforts. I should just like to say to this wonderful woman here who talked about working for the bond, and I have a lot of people here, and some of you I met with a few days before the bond, and you were all running out to go to your phone trees and get the vote out. And you know, I don't think this is the first time at a board meeting we've ever stopped to think about thanking all the many, many people in the community who got that bond passed. And it would not have happened had they not expended the tremendous effort that they did, and we thank you very, very much. And I don't, you know, somebody said, I don't think they're here now, but they were sort of saying, oh, gee, it wasn't a very big victory. Come on. It was a marvelous victory. And I think it is an expression of the values of the community who want to continue to invest in their schools and to make them and to keep them at the level they should be now and going forward. So I thank all of you for that. And it's about time somebody did that, I think. In any case, those were a few of the things. Do you want me, Doug, to talk about the, you know, with regard to the position of the assistant superintendent? I have to say that it was just in January that we had a board meeting, and the board approved with that title now of the assistant superintendent. And at that time, we had sort of debated whether we wanted to do it immediately. I know there was a great push to do it for obvious reasons. It's desperately needed, has been needed for a long time. We haven't had that position for a couple of years. And the fact is that, however, we were also, and we talked about it at the time, we thought it would be so good if we could bring that, to create that position, work on recruitment this spring, and then have our new superintendent in place, and then engage that superintendent in selecting the person that would be the partnership going ahead for the following year and beyond. And I'm very happy to say that I've spoken to Valerie about this, and I think you're very happy to be able to select the person to fill that position. And how serendipitous it is that here you are, someone who probably in this group is the only person to have been an assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum and instruction. Who better than you, who will be the boss of this new person, but also knows the job, I'm sure, like the back of her hand. And this is exactly what the district needs. This is an area that will benefit tremendously academically with the creation of this position. I was concerned, however, and somebody had said, well, you know, we're starting awfully late in the process. Hey, we've been at this for a while in terms of building up to the recruitment, and we have put out, we've sent out notices, and we've been in the newspaper. In the materials, I'm sorry I don't have it for the people sitting out in the audience, but the board has in front of them various documents that we've developed. You'll see, according to the schedule, we're right on schedule. In fact, we have now gotten replies. I should point out that we had 120 applicants, outstanding applicants, who it was the biggest problem we've had so far. And we had a few volunteers, and myself, and who helped in with this, and Maureen, and we also had, of course, Lynn Walker, our HR person, and so on. We went through and picked out what we thought was the cream of the crop. It was so hard to choose. We ended up by choosing 20 people. We're going to be giving them, starting in a couple days, screening interviews. Once we bring that grouping down to maybe, say, somewhere between 7, 8 contestants of applicants, we will then go into a different mode where we're going to involve all the constituents. If you look down at the bottom of the page, by the way, here are the places we advertise. You'll see on the front page here. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have these for you, but we're going to involve all the major stakeholders, similar, very much the same, the way you did with the selection of the superintendent. We'll be involving SEPTA and PTSA and all the groups that come to mind will be part of that, and the different constituencies and students, and of course the board. The board will have multiple chances in this process. By the way, I should also like to add to the board, if you would like, if you have somebody that you want to recommend that you think that maybe you missed a deadline, but is anybody else we've missed out on, please tell us. We can add another interview or two to see how that might turn out. Also, I have the whole collection, boxes like this, of resumes, and there are some that, frankly, we would not recommend if anybody on the board wants to look and see those that were not selected. We can offer that to you as well. But in any case, we're moving this right along, and what you'll see is only a draft, not a final document, of the job description. What we did back in January when the job was approved, we went out and we sent out to all the various schools in the area and looked at their job description of this title. And we combined it, and this is sort of a composite of what that looks like. Now, there are things in this that I don't like. It's still a work in progress, and again, if members of the board, if you want to suggest changes, most welcome. But what I do like about this, we did, I think, summarize in here all of your major things that the jobs that this position does in other districts. And however, I think that Valerie may be agreeing with me if she's looking at it. She does have one of these, that it's asking a person to do an awful lot. It's typically what they do all this, don't they? Yeah, you know. But even notwithstanding, it's a big job. That's why we've needed it for so long, and I think this is a pretty good start. But we need still to finish up, maybe make a few corrections there. And you'll see some of the history of the search that we've had. One of samples of things that were sent out to advertise it and so on. And Lynn, who's not here, is doing a great job. She's HR here. Lynn Walker sent a note about we're starting now with the screening interviews, and I'm very, very happy. I'm so excited about working with Valerie on this, and I think it's going to be a great thing for her to be able to have a major say, not only in how the job is structured as it relates to what you do, but in fact, and indeed, you're going to be I know your right hand, because that's how it works. This is how most schools in the region work. Superintendent, assistant superintendent. That's a tremendous combination, and I know it will enable you to get a lot more done. Okay, thank you.
Charlie, I just have a question. I had written to you on Friday and I didn't hear back. When we discussed this on January 7th, I actually didn't appreciate the value of a job description, and you spoke at length about it, and Jody, you supported that. It was very important. And you said that before the position was advertised that the board you would seek board approval. What's happened is we weren't asked, and I actually found out last week that the position had been advertised with a long job description, which I assume is this or some version of it, and that the window had closed. I mean, I know we can open it, but no, please don't interrupt me. Anyway, as a board member, and I know there were others, we didn't even know that this had happened. We were waiting to get a job description. I assumed it was on hold until we hired somebody. So I just want to make the statement that I'm disappointed that the board was not looped in, that we didn't get to confirm what was posted as a job description. We didn't know about it. I will add one more thing. As I look at the list of places where it was advertised, there are certain ones that I've asked for in the past, and I think we used 2 years ago to try to ensure a more diverse pool. I see you have fraternities and sororities here, but there is the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, as well as the National Alliance of Black School Educators. There's Bank Street School of Education. There's Teachers College. These are places we should be looking for. More New York City-based places. And this looks very Westchester-based. So again, my disappointment at the lack of approval, the fact that at least some of us didn't even know this was happening until we heard from somebody who had seen it, and as to where we've advertised. Let
me say, I've heard what you've had to say, and I want to ease your angst. There is nothing lost. Actually, the ads that went out did not include what was and still is a draft job description. The point is that it is still a work in progress, and that's not to any detriment of the search process.
But Charlie, with all due respect, there was one that had it may have been the New York Times, quite a lengthy one. And all I'm saying is,
No, that's not true.
I'll send it to you.
Charlie?
Charlie, I'll send it to you. I saw it. That's where I saw the job description before this. But all I'm saying is, at least some of us felt we were waiting to hear, and it was troubling to know that all this had taken place in light of promises and that we didn't know
I'm
about
sorry. I'm sorry if you felt left out. Let me just emphasize, you guys have had a very, very busy time, and you've done a great job in selecting. I congratulate you on it, this new superintendent. I felt at the time your attention was hardly focused on looking at an assistant. I also made a calculation that you could be appropriately involved still in the examples I've given of how you can have input into everything. Notwithstanding, I felt that I wanted to get moving in as much as you're running out on time. In fact, somebody had just said how Ardsley and a bunch of other schools are looking for assistant superintendents. I didn't want to wait and have committees and to get this done and that. And knowing your priority was rightly the superintendent. So I pushed it along. It was researched. I thought it was well thought out. Still can be changed, and your input will be valued, whether it's back then when you were so busy or tomorrow or next week or whenever. It will be counted in, I assure you. Thank you. And of course, that's not just for Lisa. That's for everybody. But I think you guys worked so darn hard and with obvious success in the other selection that I just didn't want to dump a whole bunch more on you. Now you have time, or you will have time, to turn your attention to this other equally important selection, and I think definitely with the participation of the incoming superintendent.
So just so I'm clear on next steps, if I'm reading this, thank you for that, Charlie, and for all your work. And Lynn, I don't think is here any longer, but I know Lynn has been putting a lot of time and energy into this as well, so thank you for that. So it looks like the next steps here, 15-minute screening interviews, which you and Lynn are doing? Is that what
Yeah, we're doing it just in the central office, and from there we are depending to see who emerges from that. And by the way, if I, we had a lot of great choice there, but even we would go back and look at other choices if need be, because we want to present a really great slate. But then that would be the next thing would be to probably in a very similar scenario to the way you work in the selection of the superintendent. Once you get beyond once you get down to five up to 8 people, whatever it is, and then maybe the board would do that if they wish to help to screen those folks, or maybe they'd want to see when it's down to a couple, 3 finalists, but we can talk about that if you prefer.
So what is the best way? So for example, it says April 8th, superintendent HR to organize selection committees. Should individual board members reach out to you if they have thoughts on selection committee, and who should be,
Well, I think you know the format that you followed previously, and I think it would be, and if you look down at that, you look at those representative groups. I mean, this is the people that you want to see involved, and I think we would be recruiting to do that. Similar.
Okay, but I mean, it sounds like Lisa shared, maybe others are sharing, that there's places where they want to have more involvement with the process. It sounds like that's one of the places, potentially around selection committee, where if people want to go in and look at all the 120 resumes in Lynn's
Well, we have it,
actually,
if you want to make an appointment with me, we'll set you up down where the old the office was that we don't use anymore, that will be used by the new assistant superintendent. You could use that to look through any of the other, if you think that we overlooked anyone, you can find all the various resumes in there.
Okay. And then when and how does Valerie get involved? Where is that?
Well, Valerie and I have spoken to this, and I know she's very keen to do it, and I will give her choice of opportunity. So, for an example, I started out by saying, hey, would you like to come to those screening interviews? And I said 20, and counting, and 15 minutes to a half hour. And she said, no, that's okay. I can come when you get it cut back down a little bit more than that. And so I'm going to keep her, up to speed and step by step. And whenever she wants to jump in, it's hers to do so.
Okay, thank you for putting that all together. Next on the agenda is 5. I don't know what number this is, but it's adoption of bond proposition.
Yes.
Yeah.
March 25th.
This is a carryover from last week's
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah, okay. And so this is essentially, we voted on it, and now we have to
No,
adopt
you
what
have
was
not,
voted on.
correct, yep.
The community voted on it, we have to adopt what was voted on.
Correct.
Okay. And this has to be a roll call vote? Yes. Okay. So do you want to do the roll call? Yeah, go ahead.
Wait.
Well, no, just wait a second.
A roll call vote.
Jody.
Jody, you have to vote.
It's a roll call vote means that I mistakenly say yes or no to the resolution. Like Congress.
When big money is involved.
All right, so Jeremy Arno?
Yes.
Lauren Vernon? Yes. Doug Sunshine?
Yes.
Tim Bear?
Yes.
Lisa Victor? Yes. Wendy Meyer? Yes. Did you do a motion?
Motion.
To do it,
You have to do a motion even though it's a roll call? Okay.
I think you
A
have to do a
motion to adopt the bond proposition by the BOE? Second. No, I just have to, just second.
Just second in the motion.
Okay,
There.
Lauren second, yeah. Okay.
All right, so it's adopted.
Adopted. The bond is officially adopted. Okay. Business items. Does anybody have any questions? It looks like, how many items are there? 18 total?
I have one little comment.
Sure,
Number 7,
sure.
Sam Brecker.
Okay. C-K-E-R, right? Okay, well, B-R-E-C-K-E-R, probably.
B-R-E-C-K-E-R.
Okay. Yeah, it may have just been the way it was written on the timesheet. And then Doug, on the memo you said was a little bit difficult to read on the day automation, that was just an explanation of why we're approving that invoice.
Okay.
And it was just because our trap doors don't have the card reader, so the police can't, once they get in from the exterior doors, they can't get in because they're in that man trap door.
Does anybody have any further questions on items 1 through 18? I have a printout. There's no more we're adding. 18 is the number, right? Okay, no, that's.
Oh, okay. For the 2 police officers.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt business items 1 through 18. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Cooking with gas. Okay, 5C, placement for services for CESC and CPSC. Do I have a motion to adopt the placements? A second? Second. All in favor? Okay. Personnel appointments. 6A, B, and C. Does anybody have any questions on those? Nope. Do I have a motion to adopt items 6A, B, and C?
Janine, I just want to, were you able to update the schedule? Because I think there was an error just in one of the dollar amounts on the schedule page. It should have been. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was just a transposition. Somebody said.
Do you have a motion?
How many years is parental leave? 3?
Parental is 3, but I think the one that is on the agenda tonight is educational. And the last time you approved, oh, sorry, yes, I was looking at C. B, yes, it's 3 years. Okay.
Okay, give a motion to approve 6A, B, and C.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Just as like a formality, do I have to use the term consent agenda when I say that? Okay. Does anyone have any questions on minutes? Feb 25, March 4, March 11?
I'll just reiterate, I know you and I had some email exchanges, and we talked about perhaps hiring somebody to do our minutes. I did reach out to the person in question who does not have the time, so I would suggest that maybe the next meeting we have a discussion again and perhaps consider having people apply or, decide what we want, because to me the minutes still aren't up to date. For example, when I was looking for Dr. Wilson's discussion about the superintendent search in January, it wasn't even recorded in the minutes. So it's just, again, the way they are now, you can't search them. I think it's hard for a board to function when you don't have good minutes to rely on. You don't know what you did, and you can't even find which meeting was this discussed at. So anyway, my request is the next meeting we have a real discussion about our minutes. I know you had wanted to wait till after the bond. We're after the bond.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So there's the current minutes. Do you have a motion to approve 7A, B, and C?
So moved.
A second? All in favor?
And Janine, I'm going to be an abstention.
Okay, policy reports.
Yeah, the minutes from the February 28th meeting from the policy committee are attached. And we continue, there are 2 pieces of policy for a second read and 1 for approval on the old business section. And then there's some policies still being worked on in committee.
Okay.
Sorry, Lauren, do you mind just identifying which are the first read and which are the second read? Because I got all confused by the minutes.
Under old business, you'll see it's delineated for approval, the sexual harassment policy and regulation that was required by NISBA. And the second read are our opioid prevention and narcotic administration policy and the fixed assets policy.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, I'm confused. What's the difference between approval and second read?
We've already done a second read of the sexual harassment policy, so now we're voting on approving that policy.
I always thought that we could approve it at the second read. That's not true?
You can, but we didn't.
Got it. Okay.
And this is a NISBA suggested policy?
Yes, and it's been reviewed by our attorneys.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on those? We could vote on all. So do I have a motion to approve under old business policies, under second read and approval, policy 01108121.1 and 6645?
Okay, wait, sorry. So are we, I just want to understand, we're going to approve the sexual harassment, the opioid, and the third one?
Fixed assets.
Okay.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Second, public comment.
Wait, diversity? Diversity
Oh, yeah,
committee?
what was it? What was that?
Because
Got
the
lost.
policy was under
Yes,
old,
I see.
yeah.
Yeah, diversity committee report, sorry about that.
That's okay. I can report. Manisha Nunez and I attended, and Janice ran another terrific meeting. It's usually a short meeting because we have educators who have to leave, and it's amazing what we get done. There were some updates on the bias protocol, but I think really, and the multicultural book fair, which is coming up, but I think really what we centered on was what Karen Hemmernis spoke about were these case studies. So we were presented with 3 of them, each, raising some very, difficult issues. And we were really glad that we had this committee because now we have a forum where these things can, well, at least we can talk about and learn from them. But I think to Karen's point, we still need a place for these to go because it's not the diversity committee's role to say, okay, we have a family of color whose child is being bullied and feels that they're not being heard by the administration. Where do they go with that? They wouldn't go to the committee. So I think we need to figure out where that happens. There was one I also wanted to direct back to Dr. Wilson. One of the cases that, was troubling, and we spelled it out more at the diversity committee, was the issue of slavery and teaching slavery. And apparently what's happened in one of our schools is that there was a parent of a child of color who said, my child feels uncomfortable when this is taught. So our understanding is that the teachers have been instructed not to teach slavery and not to teach about Dr. Martin Luther King. As a diversity committee, we immediately felt that that's not the right answer. So there were two things going on. One is, how do we ensure that a curriculum decision in that way that, forgive the terminology, but that tends to whitewash history, doesn't get made? And how do we make sure that's not happening now? We want to make sure it's rectified. And the other thing is, how do we ensure that when difficult subjects are taught, that our children of color or who have some connection to the issue are not made to feel odd? So whether we're teaching slavery or the Holocaust or apartheid, how do we teach it in a way that children feel comfortable, whatever their background is? I know Nanisha, I don't know if it was Nanisha or Janice, had sent a teaching tolerance document that talked about teaching slavery in a sensitive way, and that's appended to this, so that's here for everyone to look at. But I guess, Dr. Wilson, my first question to you is, what is the school going to do to make sure that not only is slavery being taught, because we should, it's also part of the New York State standards, so it must, and again, we keep hearing the same thing over, because everybody has it right. Professional development, professional development. We need that. We need that to understand our own biases, for our teachers and our admin to do that, and development and how to teach subjects that push buttons that are very hard.
Denise.
Denise?
Denise, one of the visions of that expansion for a role is to do more consulting. And I've seen her go in and make major difference that way. And that's why we've got it, really. Secondly, I'm going to say what I said before. If there's the kind of issues that have been described as they come up, and as it happened, one of the big contests, and I dealt with it. But if you are finding that there are these types of situations that are festering and not being addressed, take it to the superintendent. The door is open, and I will do something. Now, I don't think that's a good way to manage. I think long term, you can't always have a superintendent running in to put out the fire. I think that there is longer term, we have to continue to work on this. I'm sorry if I have to say it, but I do think that staff development is critical in doing this, because you have to educate the entire community what they can do and how they can test in a game. So, yeah, I've mentioned a few examples here, but don't just talk about it and say nothing we can do. At least report it. In my case, I was pulled into one of those meetings, but I noticed you never came to me with the other two. You could have done it. Maybe you should still do it.
Well, they were in the minutes that was distributed to everybody, I guess, about 2 weeks ago. So everybody's on notice. But let me ask you, in terms of the building that's been instructed not to teach slavery, may I ask that you speak, with the building? Can you elaborate on that? Well, I don't want to identify the building. We didn't identify it at the meeting, but this is what we were told, that a parent met with an admin, said my child feels uncomfortable, and that the outcome was that the staff were directed to avoid slavery and Dr. King.
Yeah, I guess I'd like, as a Board of Education, some additional information as to, I would literally like delivered to the Board of Education how we have a building that has come up with a policy to make a decision. So, that's something, there are certain things that are kind of, that need to be elevated to an oversight body. I would say that I'd like follow-up information from the diversity committee, what information exists around a unilateral decision to not teach these subjects.
I have a suggestion.
I have to say, I really say this is not a committee issue. This is a core curricular issue, challenge that's going on. And Dr. Wilson has a point. I'm not really sure. I can't comment on where the process. But I'm just looking at case 3 right now. Something happened. I don't know where, how, or what, or many of the details of it. And something broke down after that happened to be where we are right now. And I don't know what that is. And somehow that's got to be investigated. But that's not really a board.
What I was going to
agree
say,
with Doug.
I think what we can do is we can ask, I can ask Janice if she can write a confidential memo to the board fleshing out more details.
No, I don't think so. I don't agree with that. I don't think it goes to the, this is not a board issue.
I don't think it's done for the board. I will speak to politics and track the story down and find out exactly what happened on the board.
Right.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's
minimum.
That's the procedure.
and that's what I was asking, what's going to be done, because this is a curriculum decision. So if you're on, if Janice can report to you more details and then you can follow up on it, that would be great.
One way or the other, I'll find out, I'll take that. But I don't think we can talk about it until we really get the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Was that the whole community diversity report?
I think those are the highlights, but we did find that method of using case studies to be very helpful. And my thanks to Rise for all their work on the committee.
Okay. Now we are on to second public comment.
Hello. I'm going to sit down since it's such an intimate group at this point. First of all, Dr. Hennings-Piedmont, my name is Kate Lowengart. I live at 9 Amherst Drive. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for staying this long to see how the sausage is made. We appreciate it. Welcome to the Hastings Sausage Factory. I just wanted, and I wasn't planning on being this granular this evening because this is a very exciting night for the district for a lot of reasons. There's some really great conversations going on. With regards to the budget, the line item about the TAs at Hillside, and I'm also the co-president of SEPTA, so I should say that that's where I'm speaking from on this issue particular. In our conversations with all the stakeholders, the solve for that line item is being presented very differently. And it does seem like the solve hasn't been fully fleshed out the way Maureen indicated. And from right now, it's a very complex scheduling scenario at Hillside, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. There's block scheduling and different instructional periods in each grade. So it's not as simple as one TA sharing both first grade classrooms. And it does seem between the special ed department and the Hillside administration, which have been working incredibly collaboratively together. It's really an amazing thing to see. It does seem like it ends up being this rotation of TAs who will come in and out of multiple classrooms multiple days. So from a child-centered approach, it's really not there yet because a child might interact with up to, I think the number, I don't want anyone to quote me, but it was like above 4 TAs a week in their classroom because there was a rotation involved. So yeah, I think, and that's the thing, is there seems to be a lot of, so I just want to make sure that, because I think it seems like everything's really in a good place, but in that, I would encourage you all to dig a little deeper and make sure that the solve there works for the kids and for the TAs and for the teachers. Because as many of us know, I mean, we're talking about someone as pivotal to our community as like a Del Gorman. I mean, I'm going to start throwing names out because there are people who are our TAs who are like beloved members of our community who give so much to these classrooms and to every kid. This isn't just a special ed issue. And it's quite honestly, it's not as sexy as FLES or music, and I think it's kind of getting lost in the shuffle. And I just want to make sure that before it's voted on, we're confident that the decision that's made, because we're talking here about the difference of 2 A's in the building, 2 TAs in the building, that that the solve that's made works to allow the TAs to do the good work that they do. You know, these are the people who know which kids need help tying their shoes, and they know how to give math interventions, and they're really a lifeline for so many people. So I just wanted to kind of flag that, so you could put a little Post-it on the side of it and continue the conversation. SEPTA's happy to share the information that we've gathered from everybody, but I know that, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small thing, but I just want to make sure that there's follow-up there.
just wanted to quickly respond to the comment about the cases, and just, I think one thing is I want to make, sorry? Oh, Karen Hammerness again, from RISE and a parent. I just want to make a plea for accuracy around the cases. We wrote those to be very careful to protect the identities of the people in the cases, and to make sure that we could talk about these issues as problems of practice, so that we could think together about protocols, policies, and practices that we could use to support children, teachers, administrators, and in no intent to blame or anything, but really to problem solve. So I want to make that really clear. And I'm a little concerned just about the case around the teaching of slavery, and just please do, we're an advocacy group. We may not have the full story. We wanted to raise it as a challenge, but we don't have all the details. And I just want to make sure that when you look into it, take the case as a description of, what we heard from one perspective, but I think it's something that you will need to investigate yourself as a district. The second thing is just to say, in terms of going to the superintendent, that's absolutely what we recommend to families and teachers who come and talk to us. In some cases, they have reported that there hasn't been a really clear response, and I think part of it is that as a district, we need a clear set of protocols and structures and policies. And I know Tesfa and Jesse are working really hard on the bias protocol, and that's going to be so important, because part of what the challenge is that these issues come up and parents and children and administrators don't know who to go to. Sometimes they go somewhere and they don't feel like it's being responded to right away, and that's when they sometimes turn to us. And it may be in part because there isn't a clear protocol on the part of the district, and there isn't a clear reporting back to the community. So for instance, we didn't know that there had been a resolution in the case. I hadn't heard anything about that, and part of it is being transparent with the community when things are solved, so that we know that that's really what's happening, and that there's an explicit process that the district takes to kind of treat these issues as they come up. So that's it.
I think your suggestion for protocols is very important.
Oh, and actually one other thought, in the diversity committee, we also did talk about having a committee, so that if there were something that came up, that we could report to multiple people, and there might be a representative from different schools. So it was a thought.
Okay, thank you. Any Board of Ed comments?
Welcome aboard.
Great, so I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Can I just throw something in old business that I didn't put on, but I just need, the skate park. I just wanted to update you on the skate park, because I would like to get back to the students who have done so much work. They feel confident, there's some money now earmarked, the village is willing to give money toward it. I think we've discussed the area that we felt that the district is not using that could be a potential area. And Mike Jacobs, who's also a local architect who's been assisting this group, we looked at areas, the left, we talked about when you're going up to the Burke Estate, opposite of the baseball field, to the left, closer to the road, where there's a clearing, an area of clearing that we could look, and we would give them a certain amount of clearance. I know we talked about some trees, and many of which there are none yet. So I guess what they need from us would be a letter of intent to say that we would be willing to offer this property, similar to how they use the lower Reynolds for their park, to say that the board would be willing to give the space for the creation.
So 2 questions about
Yep, sure.
Does it involve taking down trees?
Right now I don't have, in looking at the space and speaking to Joe, there may be a few weed trees. Many of the, if you kind of look up in that area, Jody, you'll see a lot of it is kind of, like we have some dumpsters and things up there. So I think the majority of the space, it would just, it may be that either if we felt it was going to cut in too much into the property or into trees, we may just reduce the square footage of the.
It's not going to be able to go out to the road.
No, and no.
Okay.
So.
And I just care about liability.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only thing.
So.
It's on school property.
Yeah, neighboring towns, whether it's in Yonkers or whether Ardsley or whether in Yorktown, they all have skate parks. All of their skate parks are in,
school district.
The town areas, not school areas.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen.
Well, obviously the village would be responsible for it, like the addition, like
but even though it's on school property.
Yeah, I mean
Civic Kid breaks its arm.
Right. We will look at it, but I just want to say, is there a willing, because they just want to know if they're, I mean, again, the willingness to give it, correct. Well, I think if, once we have the,
I have total willingness to the extent that our lawyers.
okay, as long as the lawyers say yes, you're good with the property, though.
And again, that there's not too much involvement.
Sure, of course. Yep.
Yeah, but it's really kind of a weed.
Tim has to skate.
I gotta skate.
Tim's a skater.
Skate, I mean, look, it'll be awesome.
No, it's not. They actually looked at areas that were closer to homeowners, and then I was like, there's no way, so.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
Motion adjourned?
So moved.
Second? Okay, all in favor?
Amen.